Rodrigo.
And this is Katie.
And we have Alex helping us with our process. Okay, so an Äerdschëff is an autonomous building that is dealing with its own waste systems. It's like producing its own energy, it's producing its own food, and it's made out of reclaimed and recycled materials, and it's it's kind of a living building.
Based on the idea of the Äerdschëff and slightly modified to the legal and climatic constraints of Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the idea comes from the US, from a company called Biotecture in Taos, New Mexico, and yeah, as Rodrigo mentioned, we changed a couple of things. Well, Äerdschëffs are really interesting things because they really show you autarky in practice. You can build them, yourself. You can participate in the building process. You can learn a lot about systems, electric systems, watch systems, and also building in general. And we had this crazy idea a couple of years ago, and just said we want to do an Äerdschëff or an Äerdschëff-inspired house. And then things happened. Like lots of people worked on it, and then we got land, and then we got money, and so this is actually happening. Our idea is really to build a public Äerdschëff, and we call it Äerdschëff, which is Luxembourgish for Äerdschëff, and it's going to be a place where people can learn, people can just hang out, people can live, and like lots of different types of people can get together. So basically there was Lea, who was a European volunteer, an architect from France, and she basically made the first plans, the first draft plans, so that then we could go to the funders and say, look, we really worked on this, and this is our estimated budget, and this is what we need.
One of the first steps that helped this become a reality was when the secondary school, the lycée in Reflexions, where we on that ground where we will build, they when they got on board, when they said they wanted to do this, I think that's when it really kicked off.
Our meetings, the headmaster of the school showed up at one of our meetings and said, hey, I'm going to show you land, and then it kind of came together that we got the funding as well. So that was our major challenges, because Luxembourg is so expensive in terms of land. We could have never afforded any land like this. And it's also great because it's now a collaboration with that school, and it possibly, with the Ministry of Education and so forth. So,
And that kind of determined also the direction of the project becoming a public building rather than being a privately owned building. Because due to the constraints of Luxembourg, with land being so expensive and building being so expensive, that was one of the only options we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's been great about the project is that it brings together all kinds of different people. That it sparks a lot of enthusiasm somehow. It has an interesting feel to it for lots of people, and we have been lucky to have a really cool community around it of people of the pilot group, people that just want to volunteer, people that support us generally. We have political support. It's been really interesting in bringing people together. Basically, these Äerdschëffs come from a place that is, in terms of building code, a bit under-regulated. So you have pretty much the Mesa, which is this big desert where there's pretty much nobody, and there's not a lot of regulations on how you should build. So lots of people build without permits. And
where is the Mesa?
The Mesa is in Taos, New Mexico. And basically, Luxembourg is a very different environment where we're in the EU. We have a strong environmental code, which is a good thing.
This is law in Luxembourg that was passed, that any new building from 2017 onwards should have a certain standard.
In terms of energy efficiency?
Yes.
so they've applied the passive house standard to new constructions, and so we've had to go through a lot of hoops to pass the energy efficiency tests and stuff like that for the Äerdschëff, because it's not built like a passive house and it doesn't actually naturally fulfill these regulations that are based on computer simulations and different models that engineers use. But it doesn't mean to say that the Äerdschëffs don't work, but they just work with low tech and so we've had to kind of do some design modifications because of that.
But also, one of the bigger hurdles we had to take was to make sure that the project itself was being considered as an experimental testing site, so that we wouldn't have to fall into the same category as a regular building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like some of the stuff, and then also in terms of the water regulation, we couldn't just do a septic tank, like a normal septic tank, but we've had to come up with a different idea to how to clean our water on site. So those are two differences. Also with the drinking water, Luxembourg has a strong drinking water regulation that's adapted from the EU law, and basically in it says that you cannot, for instance, shower with rainwater in a public building. So we've had this additional problem, and so we've had to put in a much more sophisticated drinking water purification system.
Talking of the construction sector, I kind of noticed that the questions that we had, or the ideas that we had, were, to some of them they were new and to some of them they weren't. So there were a lot of different opinions on that. Some had heard about it, but in terms of legal framework, not everybody really knew we weren't sure how.
Because in Luxembourg nobody's done this before, so we're operating a little bit in a legal vacuum for some of the things, because nobody's really attempting the same things as we do, because we're a pioneer project and a pilot project and everything. But that's an interesting thing. And then also we found out that we got face to face with a lot of contradictory statements from engineers. I mean, I come from the social sciences, so I always think that only in the social sciences can you have like many different opinions around one issue. And I thought the natural sciences are, they know what to do, so you just ask one engineer and you ask the other engineer, and they have the same results. But they don't. So this is interesting for us to have seen that there's a lot of politics in the engineering and construction world as well, and that certain policies favor more centralized, big-scale things, and also engineers have a hard time to think low-tech, and to think with the implantation. They just kind of go, let's just put a pump here, and let's put a pump there, and put a pump there. And so they don't think in terms of limited energy. They kind of just go, we're just connected to the grid, and that's it. But if you have this like autonomous thing and you want to make it work, then you really have to be very meticulous with like paying attention to details, so that it will actually work afterwards. If it's only going to be gravity fed, or if you just have the means to have like X amount of pumps and stuff like that. So we've had a lot of learnings around that. Also bringing together different practitioners from different fields to work on a problem together, because they're usually very segmented. They like work in their little corner of the water thing, and then other people do this, and these people do only the rainwater canal and whatever. But they're not really used to working together on a thing. So, and this is something that we discovered, that our job is to better do up our task as a kind of coordinator, and bringing these people together and really making kind of protocols to have this kind of collaboration work better. And we learned also a lot about the construction sector as such. We went to see lots of people who are quite aware of the idea of lots of resources and things getting more expensive. Cement producers and all kinds of people that we talk to, who are interested in making construction more circular, but are kind of far away from that at the moment. At the beginning we set out with a a charter, so we had some things that were important to us. And then, yeah, it's kind of difficult that you have to make compromises, for me at least. But we were also thinking, okay, we have to adapt it so we can actually get it built. It's better if we adapt it a little bit and we get it built than if we stick to our thing and we don't get anywhere.
Well, there's a lot of hoop jumping, I guess. We at this stage we still haven't received the building permits, so we're not quite sure if the adaptations that we've done so far are the final ones, if they are enough. And this could also mean that the project might change considerably if we don't find the right compromise to move forward. So it's a tricky place between what your steering group and what you set out to do and what the legal frameworks allows you to do, and to what extent you can push it into one direction.
But I think one important thing is that it's not just about the actual product, but it's also about the process, how to get there, and what we learn in the middle. In this whole middle bit of like 3 years, in terms of
2 years and 9 months.
What we're actually learning for ourselves, for the organization, for pioneering projects like this, because we're interested in doing new things. We're not interested in doing a house
just for the sake of doing a house.
For doing that, because there's other people who do that much better than we do. What we want to do is actually bring together a community process to have it happen, and bring together all kinds of skilled people, bring together all kinds of experts, bring together all kinds of compromises as well, to some degree, to make it happen and to learn in the process. And also then after, it's not just to build it, but then after that it's going to be run as a kind of learning center, as a kind of showcase for resilience, for local production, for local, dealing with your waste, dealing with your local electricity, all that kind of stuff, and everything that entails. How do we actually live today? What does that do to the environment? How does that impact our social way of being together? All this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
See, I think that the Äerdschëff has already set sails, even though it's not built yet, because people have come on board and gone off, and new ones come on board and they travel a little bit and they get off again, and so it's nice. It's a nice process until we're gonna dock this Äerdschëff somewhere and we're gonna stay there, and we're still gonna receive people that are gonna be coming and going. So
yeah, and I think that's an important part of it, this whole self-build process that you mentioned. Because it's about people building this thing as well. So people have been a little bit impatient in the pilot group this year, because we had to kind of create the project. They thought that, at one point we thought, okay, so hopefully we're going to build in 2017, but then now it's kind of transpiring that we're building in 2018, hopefully, and finishing by the end of the, whatever, summer, autumn,
spring,
sometime. And because timing is very difficult in this project, it's we're waiting for permits. We're constantly waiting for somebody to answer to some questions that we have, and somebody that needs to put in place something that we cannot do. And we follow up a lot of collaborations. There's a lot of different threads in this project, and that's what makes it exciting, but also a little bit challenging. And in terms of the self-build aspect, I just want to say also that this site that we're planning is going to welcome international and local volunteers, and so it's going to be like a festival-like thingy as well that happens where people can just learn on the spot and in practice and just doing things.
It has a south-facing side which allows the sun to penetrate the building and heat up the thermal mass inside the building, which will then in turn at night give back that heat. So that is one aspect of it. We noticed through a thermal simulation that we did with engineers that either way, there is not sufficient sun in Luxembourg to heat, to solely heat this building in winter. So we will require some sort of other heating. And there are different talks how to do that. Basically, I combined this. The solution is a combination of how are we going to cook in winter if there's not enough electricity to heat with electricity like we would in summer. We could heat with wood. So we would cook and heat at the same time, and store warm water through that heating. And the same, we would use a hybrid heating system that would also use the solar thermal, if there's enough sun, to heat up that water as well. And if possible, and that's where we're talking and we don't know yet, is what's it called? Biominer.
Yeah, so it's a Jean-Pain system with compost that is kind of providing heating through the kind of thermophiliac bacteria that are kind of degrading a whole mass of biomass, and you can then heat up the water with that, with the dye in tubes, and then that circulated around. This has been coming up. I mean, this is one of the issues about the Äerdschëff that we're facing, that there's so many possibilities of doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we just also have to move on and choose systems that are more or less reliable, and choose systems that we can put in place now, and that don't take years to get permissions for. Like we had this wind turbine thing for complementing our solar, but we're not really doing that at the moment. And also biogas, and these things are, in Luxembourg, it's quite regulated. So if you want to be a biogas producer or have a wind turbine, it's like this thing called commodo incommodo. So it's a very, very long and complicated permission process. So some things we just they would have been cool, but yeah, we just also want to get this thing up and having to make compromises there. And so in terms of design modifications, we've also opted a lot more for materials that are sustainable not just from its how can I say that it's not just in the Äerdschëff, and that some of this stuff is reclaimed, that it's not just waste, but we've also replaced some of the things that are traditionally used in Äerdschëffs, like the styrofoam, which in Europe isn't really used anymore because it has really drawbacks, both from its embodied energy from its production, and also from that is just a waste product even after it will be discarded, but also that it doesn't let things breathe. So there are some alternatives that we're going to use instead of that.
But we are using the tires.
Yeah, we are using tires.
That was a bit of a problem. We feared that the initial reaction of most people when you mention tires is that they're toxic and that they have off-gassing, and that they have heavy metals that will be in the air and so on. So we decided to contact different Äerdschëffs and to get dust samples and send those off to the national lab, which we did. And the results, I haven't received the results yet, but I had a phone call with the person yesterday, and they told me that there's nothing in those dust samples that would indicate that the air quality is bad. Mm-hmm. So,
and they were testing for like 50 plus substances, including heavy metals and all kinds of different things. So these Äerdschëffs are very flat at the front to have like the highest possible solar gain. What we did is we have this little box where we do the aquaponics system, and this box it has a roof. So it's not completely glass because we established that it would overheat too much in the summer and be too cool in the winter. So we've had to kind of modify a little bit. So this is one of our major design modifications, and we're wanting to see how this actually performs, because there's some insecurity, like some of our insecurity is around that some of the engineers tell us this is going to be working better like this. and other people like biotecture are telling us that it's going to be lacking. Well, we're going to have deficiency in solar gain there, so this might be problematic, and we don't actually know some like. Yeah. In the school, there are people that are being trained as Energie- und Gebäudetechniker, it's called. So it's technicians of building and renewable energy. And basically, they have had an Äerdschëff option there, and we're also hoping to, like they did in Äerdschëff Tempelhof, to include sensors that monitor the temperature, the humidity, and all kinds of stuff in the Äerdschëff. So then we will actually then see how it performs afterwards. But we've tried to learn from the failures of previous Äerdschëffs.
And we're surely making some as well, I guess.
Yeah, and we have to make lots of mistakes in the process. This is how you fail forward. We fail forward, pretty much.
I think we kind of decided that using a large amount of glass bottles and cans is good in a place where you can maybe not recycle them, but for us it would be actually harder to find those if you weren't collecting them to then just use them. And they're not necessarily considered as trash because they're being recycled all the time. So I don't know if that's a useful.
We are going to feature
Use
some
it.
aesthetic, like some of the aesthetic glass
Sure.
brick, non-bare loading walls. But Rodrigo is referring to using just the glass as building materials. Also, cans to some extent. We probably not going to use as much as in the.
We can use them.
We can't use them as in the other ships. So. Also, we want to reduce a little bit our use of concrete, because concrete is another one that's quite high embodied energy value in terms of its production, because there's cement and everything. And we want to use more clay-based materials, some modular bricks, some miscanthus-based bricks, and then what else? Yeah, and then lots of windows that we also want to reclaim. Because our ships are usually built with new windows. We're getting some super duper sage glass windows that are kind of with nanotech stuff inside from a company that is that had them only for a couple of years, but it's now replacing them. Not because they don't work, but because it's an innovation building company, and so they kind of try new stuff all the time. Yeah, so we're getting some of those. 70,000 euros worth. It's not too bad.
And old recyclables were inside.
And yeah, Alex has been helping us to do the stock of what we actually already have in terms of
We scouted 800
materials.
doors.
And there, we found 800 doors that somebody's giving away.
Which we won't use all of them, I mean.
Yeah, not all of them. But
And not disclose.
No. They're far away.
yeah.
What else? We added a ton of PV panels.
Yeah, we're using a bit more PV panels than the 2 PV panels that people need in the desert of New Mexico, where the sun shines 350 days a year, or 360, something stupid. Where here you have like low light most of the time. Yeah, so we added that, and we're going to have a little bit of a more sophisticated way of then having events. Yeah, they don't work very well in the winter because we have high humidity here, and so in that sense, there's not going to be enough air that's going to be exchanged in the winter. It's just going to be stagnating, like cold, humid air, and so we've had to come up with other solutions to that.
And the saltwater batteries.
Yeah, we're using hopefully
would like to.
saltwater batteries, which are less toxic than lithium ion or anything else.
We looked at Akion, but they went bust.
Yeah.
And now we found an Austrian company that has the same patent. So let's see if that works.
Yeah. Our building is special because we're having a lot of fluctuation in terms of its use. So some days there will be 40 people, other days there will be 2 people, other days there will be just visitors passing through. So we've had to have a lot of modification and thinking about what that entails for our systems and how big we have to make them so that they can keep functioning even if they're more used or less used or not used and stuff like that. So we've had to build in a lot of more flexibility than if you're designing just a regular residence for somebody with 4 people more or less all the time, except for that one time a year when they have a party.
There is that box that we mentioned before is actually going to be a dedicated space for aquaponics. It's kind of a greenhouse, and there is a bit on the side that could be used maybe for something else. We were thinking of algae production. Algae, I don't know.
Algae.
And so we have to see about that, which would enhance our food production in the Äerdschëff, which is kind of the idea. To also have to some degree an independence in food production.
We also have a collaboration with a space exploration company that is doing with A.
Oh, with A.
Sorry, yeah. They're doing life support systems. So basically, they're interested in creating the conditions in closed loop systems for life to flourish. So basically, how do you actually get bacteria and plants to cohabit in a closed system so that they will balance and keep on restoring each other's energy needs. And so hopefully we're going to have some kind of connection between ecology and space, which is something I'm very interested in, happening when the Äerdschëff is going to be built. Next steps. Well, we done the plans, so now we need to go from the architecture plans to the construction plans. We need to organize the whole volunteer working site, the construction itself, get the materials, get reclaimed materials,
work with companies,
get everybody interested and
organize the actual date.
So you can follow us on Facebook or on our website, which we're going to put in the video. And
like this thing that people do?
Yeah.
Somewhere there.
And
great.
Stay tuned. We're going to do another update at some point. We don't do regular updates, but we do updates and then we tell everything.
We do? I thought this was a once-off thing.
We're going to do this again.
Okay, great.
Yeah, cool.